It's KOWS 107.3 FM, Occidental, California. On the telephone from New York City, we have Kay Hymowitz. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good Lord. You know, I'm having so much trouble here at the radio station. I'm getting a bad echo here. I'm going to ask you to, let me call you back and see if we can do better.
Okay.
I'll call you right back.
All righty.
Oh, boy, this is a nuisance. You know, it's happening much too often. We need some help here with the radio station. We need to have good equipment, and we need some support from the community for that. I can't be doing this every week, floundering around. So here's a little more music. Okay, we'll try this again. KOWS 107.3 FM, Occidental, California. On the telephone from New York City, Kay Hymowitz. Hello, Kay.
Hello.
Sorry for the foul up. We have a little equipment. We're not everything we wish we could be here. We have a little tiny radio station, and we're doing the best we can. Hopefully we can have a good quality of sound. Appreciate you joining us. Kay Hymowitz is the William E. Simon Fellow at the Manhattan Institute for Policy Study and a contributing editor of City Journal, where she writes extensively on American childhood, family, and culture. Her previous books include Marriage and Caste in America, Separate and Unequal Families in a Post-Marital Age, and Ready or Not, Why Treating Children as Small Adults Endangers Their Future and Ours. And the new book is called Manning Up, How the Rise of Women has Turned Men into Boys. And congratulations on the new book.
Well, thank you very much.
Your perspective on men and boys is just, it's thrilling that you would have such insight into us, into the males. And I know that it takes place within a context of a learned sociological approach to understanding culture and gender issues and our national identity and our culture and all these things. You know, Ms. Hymowitz, I'm furious here with the station. I'm still getting a pretty bad echo in my ears. Are you hearing any?
I hear it when I speak, yes.
Yeah, well, this is unacceptable. Can I ask you one more time if you would you mind trying it by calling the station?
Hold on a second. I will try. Give me a number, please.
It's 707-874-1073.
1073.
And I'll hang up and I'll ask you to call us.
All right.
Thank you.
Bye.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm trying to do a radio show here, and this happened last week with David Deutsch, and I don't know what the problem is, and I don't really care what the problem is, but I need functioning equipment to do the show. So I'm asking the management and staff of the radio station to look after this, and I'm asking the community to support the radio station sufficiently. Hold on. Hello. This sounds much better. Let me put you, hold on one more time, and I think we're going to be in good shape now. Okay. Hi, Kay.
Hi.
This sounds better to me. Thank you so much, and my apologies. We gave an introduction the last time. I think that'll hold up okay. And I guess what I was saying was just what a real pleasure and what an education it is to be reading this new book and some of your other books and some of your more recent postings about the very dramatic cultural changes that we're in the middle of and that we might not see too clearly.
Well, yes. I mean, what interested me was just how well young women were doing, both in school and in the workplace. At least when they're still single and childless, they seem to be earning more than men, according to a number of studies. And the gender gap is all but erased. In fact, it's turning in favor of women.
Yeah, this is part of a larger phenomenon of women's ascendancy, not just in American culture, but in world culture.
That's right. Women are now 57% of college graduates in the United States, but the rates are very similar in other parts of the developed world and even some of the developing world. Certainly all around Europe, all through Europe, Western Europe and Eastern Europe, women are more likely to have college degrees than men. In the United States, they're more likely to have master's degrees and PhDs. They're now 51% of PhDs. So there is something about schooling that women seem to be very good at, and that is, as you say, a phenomenon that reaches far beyond our own borders.
Mm-hmm. And women are flooding into the professions. They're flooding into the law and into medicine and into finance as well.
Well, that's right. Not so much finance. I mean, there's still that's still an area that's more or less dominated by men, as is engineering and a few of the other so-called STEM fields. Those are the sciences. But in a lot of the other fields, it is a woman's game. One of the arguments I make in Manning Up is that some of the success of women can be explained by shifts in the economy that has created jobs of a new order, of a new sort. Millions of jobs in communications, what we broadly call communications, which would be media and public relations. These were jobs that existed before, but they've grown exponentially. The number of them has grown exponentially. Think of just the number of television stations that we have now in the United States. If you were a kid starting out in 1970, let's say, and you wanted to be a television anchor or a television reporter or for that matter, a news reporter, your options were very, very limited because there just weren't that many outlets. Now, we've got, our 500 channels. Nothing's on, of course, but at least we have the 500 channels. And all of those channels need not just on-air people, but people behind the scenes. And women are dominating especially the news gathering institutions in the media.
Right. And this is, of course, part of the end of the industrial growth era.
Right. Right. We're moved from what's generally, we generally think of as an industrial economy to what economists often refer to as a knowledge economy. That's a knowledge economy is based more on brain work rather than bodily labor. And women are easily men's equal in that world. Also, a lot of the today's jobs need plenty of people skills, communication skills. And women are not only men's equal when it comes to something like that, they may even be their superiors. So that's a lot of what's going on as well.
Mm-hmm. And the industrial world was a hyper-masculine world.
That's right. There may have been women who could handle the danger, the dirt, the incredible, strenuous demands of working in a coal mine, in steel factories, and so on. But there weren't many, and there weren't any options for taking care of the children other than mothers at that point anyway.
Mm-hmm. Ms. Hymowitz, you're a fellow at the Manhattan Institute.
I am.
Would you tell us a little about the Manhattan Institute?
Sure. The Manhattan Institute is a public policy think tank. Their orientation is generally in favor of free and open markets. we run a lot of research, or we do a lot of research in areas of tax policy, regulatory policy. We were very early in the game in talking about the problems of pensions, the pension explosion that we're now hearing so much about. I gather you're hearing a lot about it in California. We've certainly been hearing about it in New York for a while. So that's their general orientation. My work is a little bit different. I tend to cover more social and cultural issues, which we do believe are related to economic issues insofar as you need well-educated, stable, well-educated kids, stable families, and in order to have successful people in the, people who can manage in this knowledge economy.
Right. And what is City Journal?
City Journal is a publication of the Manhattan Institute. It's put out 4 times a year. A very beautiful magazine, if you can see it in print, but also online.
And it's directed particularly toward policymakers and scholars?
Well, it tends to be read by policymakers and scholars, but also by journalists, and we're frequently quoted by the mainstream media, because I think our articles are highly researched and hard to ignore, even if you disagree with them. So we get a lot of interest from the familiar places that you know well. Even if you haven't heard of City Journal, you, believe me, have seen us quoted. But we also get our articles picked up and republished in a lot of different newspapers and magazines. The Los Angeles Times, for instance, has is often publishing our material. I should mention, by the way, that we now have on the City Journal website, and that's city-journal.org, a California page, because a number of our people are interested in California and the economic problems facing you all.
Right. So a minute ago you mentioned stable families and how important they are for American life, for life everywhere. And this is where the idea of manhood comes in. What manhood traditionally being defined very much to a large degree in terms of stable family life and fatherhood, marriage and fatherhood.
Right. One of the reasons that I started doing this work was because I had been so interested in stable family life and had written, as you mentioned when you introduced me, a book called Marriage and Caste in America, which was really about the breakdown of marriage and family among low-income people, and particularly among African Americans. And my argument in that book was that this is going to create a kind of caste society, because kids who are not getting the kind of stability they needed to move ahead in this in school in the knowledge economy, we're just going to replay. We're never going to be able to move up, and so whereas kids who are growing up with in stable homes with parents who are able to read to them and repeat or help them with their homework, but also reinforce the values of hard work and careful learning. Those kids were going to be doing okay, and indeed that is what's happening. But one of the questions that occurred to me, well, what happens when women are outperforming men in the market, in the labor force, which they are beginning to do among young women? What happens to family life and family formation? Because these young women are doing quite well, find themselves I'm talking about educated women now who tend to wait to marry till well into their 20s. But some of them look around and haven't found anybody by 30 or 35, and find that there are not many suitable men left for them. The imbalance, the gender imbalance in terms of education, is something that affects women deeply when it comes to their domestic lives, their personal lives. There is an increase. The numbers are still very small, but there has been an increase in the number of women who are deciding not to marry, but to have children on their own. Most of those women who do that tend to be low income, but it's increasingly becoming a choice of that we're hearing among higher educated women as well, as they look around and find a dearth of men.
Right. And you're suggesting that there's something akin to arrested development taking place in our young men.
Well, I think men have reacted to this advance of women. Not always with the way that we might hope. I think that part of what you see is a kind of passivity that develops with young men. Remember, a guy who has just graduated college, and this particular book, Manning Up, is really about men in their educated young men and women. Although I think a lot of what I'm saying applies to those without an education. But these young men find themselves in their early 20s with a degree, with a lot, possibly a lot of student debt, and with kind of confusion about what they're going to do in life. And they're certainly not thinking in terms of settling down, marrying and settling down and starting a family, nor are their women friends, not in their early 20s. So there is this period in the 20s which has never existed before in any human society, where you have a large number of young people, single young people, living on their own, in cities generally, and it is in many ways more like adolescence than it is adulthood. I mean, there's a lot. It's true that most of these kids are working, at least they were up until the Great Recession. And working hard, many of them, but, their social lives and personal lives tend to be more like dorm life and college life than they do something that my parents, for instance, would have recognized as adulthood.
The traditional roles have sort of evaporated?
Well, I don't know. I think there's a lot that's up for grabs still. One of the points that I make in the book is that as women out-earn men and have this very bright future, career future ahead of them, men are in a funny position when it comes to dating. I hear from a lot of women, it's not everybody, but I hear from a lot of women that they want to be asked out on dates, and they want men to pay for them. And then I hear from men, well, why? You're making more than I am. So there's some resentment out there among women who feel that men are not treating them very well, and among men who feel women want they want their cake and eat it too. They want equality, but except when they don't. And how and why is that fair to men is what they ask.
Right. Well, it's a legitimate question, I suppose.
Yeah. Yes, I think it is. And I think that women maybe need to be a little bit clearer in their own minds about these mixed messages because there are a lot of complaints. That's, as I said, the reasons I wrote the book is that I was hearing from so many women that the men that they knew were more like teenagers than they were grown men.
Mm-hmm. You discern a phase that you call pre-adulthood that's kind of new on the scene, huh?
Right, as I said before, this is something new in any human society where you have such a large number of people unattached from family life, living on their own. And not to mention sexually active, which of course was not really feasible to this extent in previous eras. So you have people in their 20s and into their 30s that's what I refer to as pre-adulthood, who are single, and who are, as I said, living more like they're on a college campus, like they're in college, than they are living as what most of us used to think of as adulthood.
Mm-hmm. What are you referring to when you say the New Girl Order?
Well, the New Girl Order is just a cute way of referring to the success of young women in this economy, in this knowledge economy. As I mentioned before, women do extremely well in fields that related to communications and media, in fashion and design. These areas, these niches of the economy have expanded over the last decades in a way that's been very, very promising for young women. So they are part of this. The women that are succeeding in these niches is what I refer to as the New Girl Order.
Mm-hmm. It seems that it's more than employment. That it seems that women are high on being women these days. That there really has been, or there continues to be, a progressive liberation of the whole gender in terms of not only the opportunities but becoming aware of their own capacities.
Yeah. Well, remember we had in the 90s this push, this initiative that came, I think, from parents, from teachers, and from policy folks to what we call girl power, and the idea was to really push young women to think of themselves as having impressive careers and moving ahead and becoming the equals of their male peers. It was a movement that, from my point of view, wasn't really acknowledging what was already happening, which is that women were already outperforming men in college and graduating at higher rates. That those rates have gone up even since then. And I think also, I worry in reading that recent history, and looking at some of the ads like a girl's rule and boys drool. That kind of thing. That there was a message to boys that they were the lesser sex, and that people were just not that interested in what they had to say.
Really, I mean, all you need is a sperm.
Yeah. Well, that's sometimes what's communicated to young men. I think we're giving a lot of mixed messages to men today. On the one hand, the third Sunday of every June, we make a big fuss over fathers, and we all spend time together and give him gifts and cards and say how important fathers are. At the same time, we have an increasing number of women who are having children on their own, and we're quite reluctant to question whether that's a good thing. And therefore, the message, I think, to men is, once again, you can take them or you can leave them, that they're really not necessary, not essential to family life. And I think that is part of the reason that we're seeing young men who are not performing as well as they might, because there's just a sense that they're not, they're extraneous. They don't have a clear role to play in this society anymore.
Right. You define adult as a temporary custodian of the social order. And it seems that the social order itself now is, if not disintegrating, certainly transforming in unforeseen ways right before our eyes.
Yeah.
So without any sense of what the social order might be in the next 5, 10, 20 years, it's maybe hard to grow into anything that seems adult.
Well, I wrote this book and started working on it and wrote it before our current economic woes, and it's kind of hard to say whether a lot of what I'm describing will continue or shift as a result of these very difficult times. But one thing we are hearing, of course, is that young people, and this includes college-educated people, are having great difficulty finding jobs and getting that first getting their foot on the bottom of the ladder to move up, and this could affect them in the long run. Whether it affects the relations between the sexes is another question, and I tend to think that it will push people to depend on themselves even more. It used to be that we had, in very difficult times, you were part of a family unit, and you could depend on your spouse, your immediate family, but also your extended family. This generation is very used to being independent. They're close to their families, their parents, in some ways more so than my generation, the boomer generation. But they also think of themselves as quite autonomous and don't like the idea of dependency on other people.
Mm-hmm. It seems that to define manhood in terms of marriage and fatherhood is a cultural definition, and it's not necessarily biologic or even maturational. That males can be men, grown men without marriage and fatherhood.
Sure. They absolutely can, but historically and really across cultures, marriage and parenthood were really the defining pieces of adulthood. That's how we knew somebody was of the adult generation. They were raising the younger generation. Mm-hmm. This is not to say that there weren't people who didn't marry, and certainly for men, there was always a class of young men who went into the army and never married, or people who went into the priesthood and didn't marry. So there were other options, but by and large, this was the way we thought about adulthood. And I think, even though today, the survey suggests that young people don't see marriage and parenthood as so central to adulthood, but that kind of flies in the face of what I've seen in many of the weddings that I've been to, and the tremendous energy that young people put into getting married, and they see this as a great event in their lives. So it may be that they think there's more to adulthood than we did in the past, but they still see marriage as pretty important.
Well, we want it to be a great event. We want it to be a one-time thing.
Yes, we sure do. And we'll see. We'll have to see how this generation does. So far, it doesn't look much different. Although the divorce rate, I should mention the divorce rate, which most people always say is 50%. It's really closer to 40%. It went down particularly among college-educated women over the last since about 1980. It really reached its height around 1980 and has been going down since. Unfortunately, a lot of the reason it's gone down, I think, is because an increasing number of women are having children outside of marriage and not getting married at all. So that may be a partial explanation for the decline in divorce rate, and not a very happy explanation.
Mm-hmm. You wrote about childhood in a book called Ready or Not, and you said that unless we recognize that children need to be nurtured as children, our society will be hollow at its core. And that was 12 years ago. So you have some perspective on just how hollow we are now, and whether we have failed to let children be children and actually encouraged or enabled them to maybe presume a false precocity or a false maturation for their age.
Yeah, I wrote that book when my own children were in elementary school and middle school, and was very struck with the difference in the way that we, meaning my generation of parents, treated our children, that we were always asking them, what do you want for dinner? What do you think about? What kind of, what camp do you want to go do? What course do you want to, what class do you want to take? That kind of thing. And it struck me that we were basically saying to kids, we don't really have anything to tell you, anything to pass on to you. But you will, and you're going to make it up as you go along. And I saw all sorts of problems with it. I have to say that since that time, we've had the soccer mom phenomenon and helicopter parenting, which is of a different order, and suggests that we, in fact, are intensely involved with our children, even as we give them a lot of choices. We are still hovering over them in a way that is something new.
How has the culture benefited by portraying men as bumbling fools?
Well, I can't see much that's a benefit to it.
Well, somebody's benefiting from it because it seems to be a media strategy or
right. Well, actually, something does occur to me, which is that I think that you tend to see this. You used to see this kind of the bumbling dad on shows that were geared towards women. And remember, early on, women were the dominated the television audiences for many decades. I'm not sure whether that's still true. It may actually still be true, depending. Now we have so many stations; it's hard to say. And we do have some all-male stations. I suppose that the bigger puzzle, you can understand why women might get a kick out of seeing men brought down like that. But the bigger puzzle is why men react to it. So we see, not just on television, but in the movies, this new creature that I refer to as the child man. We began to see him in the 1990s, who is really more of an adolescent than he is as an adult. We have all these movie stars, people like Vince Vaughn, Luke and Owen Wilson, Judd Apatow is a director, but Seth Rogen, who, what is their role in the culture? Well, their role is to say, look at me, I'm a guy, I'm not a man, I'm a guy, and I'm still having fun, and that's my role. And I know it looks kind of dumb, and that's okay, I'm just a guy.
Yeah. And you say that crudity is at the heart of the child man persona.
Well, you only need to go to one or two of these movies to know this. The jokes are always the plethora of bathroom jokes, of jokes about various bodily parts and bodily fluids, and the nasty back and forth that goes on. Yeah, sure, that's part of being an uncivilized child, right? An adolescent who still refuses to be part of the adult world. And that is a key part of the persona of the child man.
Ms. Hymowitz, I have to tell you that I'm concerned about you because of your intimacy with popular culture.
So's my husband.
Yeah. Doesn't it rot your brain, or is it all sociological field work? Or
that's right. I always joke that sometimes my husband walks in the room and he sees me watching some really trashy show, and he gives me a look, and I always say, "Honey, I'm working."
Right.
So,
well, you are.
Look. I can enjoy a lot of this stuff, but also recognize that it's signaling certain things about our culture. So I happen to be a great fan of the movie Knocked Up. I think it was very, very well done, and actually kind of important in a way, but it is also extremely crude and not recommended to take your grandmother.
You say the child man is the lost son of a host of economic and cultural changes. He has no life script, no special reason to grow up. What is a good reason for a young man to grow up now?
Well, look, look, it's the same as I think it's always been, to find meaningful work, or at least a job that will help you become part of a family unit, to help support and nurture and raise the next generation. That's what it's always been about. It's the highest aspirations for most people, I think, are to find satisfying work and satisfying love, and those are the tasks of late adolescence and early adulthood.
Yeah.
And what I'm saying in Manning Up is that those tasks have been put on hold for sometimes as much as a decade. What the consequences will be about this is something worth speculating about. If you have young guys, and young women for that matter, who have gone from relationship to relationship, who have never settled down, who have always felt that they could always find somebody new around the corner, does that affect their ability to settle down and to become a committed and loyal partner? It's an open question.
The question is to settle down to what? This is the world that we've always known is gone. It's normal is not coming back. We're not going to reignite growth in the GNP. The whole world is entering virgin territory, and it's almost impossible to see where young people are going to find, quote, meaningful work that doesn't refer to a society that is already fading in the rear view mirror.
Yeah. Well, I think we have to be careful not to overstate this. It depends which people you're talking about. Among college-educated folks, the unemployment rate remains relatively low. Now, it is higher among people who have just graduated from college. It's tough. It's quite tough for them. But for the most part, people with college education are going to be in a position to live somewhat normal lives. The question for those with less education is whether this economy will provide them the infrastructure, the possibility of a middle class life if they work for it. And that is an open question. I completely agree with you.
Yeah, I just think that quote normal life and the middle class life I think it's over.
Well, look, remember that what the surveys say. Whenever you run a survey asking, is it important or is this something you want to do, that is to marry and have children? Is family life something you want? Mm-hmm. The large majority say absolutely, it's extremely important.
Right.
So those aspirations are still there.
Yeah.
And the truth is, with an economy that's so tough, you're going to need somebody else to depend on. Mm-hmm. It's not going to be so easy to live on your own. You're going to have it's not going to be strangers who care and take care of you. It's going to be family. So, in some ways, I wonder whether the bum economy won't encourage marriage. I actually don't think so, but it's one possible conclusion, because people, like I say, they need each other. They have to depend on each other.
Mm-hmm. Are young men angry?
I think some are. They feel that they've been given a lot of mixed messages about what's expected of them. They feel that women put them down, that the culture puts them down, as we just talked about. A lot of the TV and radio images that they're seeing say men are clueless, men are slobs, they're silly, they're can't figure out what to do with themselves, and they're just little boys. So if there is this phenomenon I'm describing of the child man in the culture, it gets reinforced by the media, because these young men see these pictures and they say, yeah, that's me. And that's okay, because that's what the culture is showing them. So, are men angry? Some are. I certainly hear from a lot of them when I've published any work on the child man. The letters pour in from men who say, "Why should I get married? Women, the way women treat you, and the legal system works against men, so they say." I'm not sure that's entirely true, although there are problems there. They say, what is the point of my ever getting married? A woman will just take my child away and take all my money. So, yes, I hear a lot of that kind of anger from men.
Do you see healthy, legitimate role models for young men?
Oh, that's a good question. Yeah, I mean, there are. I was just remembering when it used to be Tiger Woods, huh? No more. We have many decent men out there. They are fine role models. I think that if you look to the media, you're going to see kind of cartoonish characters, but because that's what seems to sell. Yeah. But that doesn't mean that's the only kind of guy out there.
I don't see role models.
Yeah.
I mean, it's all about context. It's if we don't know if the world we've known is evaporating and the world to come hasn't swum into focus yet, where do we stand?
Well, look, young people grow up. By the way, young people aren't. The surveys I've looked at probably are a year or two old, so it's possible it's changed quite a bit. But this generation of what a lot of people call the millennial generation, those born in the 80s and into the 90s, is very optimistic about their future, or was up until recently. And I'm not sure you're not overstating just how bad things are. Remember, there are a large number of people who are growing up in stable homes with parents who care for them and take care of them, and who see their parents as role models. You'll often hear that from this generation. Who's your role model? They'll say, my parents. So I wouldn't go too far. There's a lot to worry about, but I think that there are also a lot of young people who are in very good position to look forward to the future.
Well, it's an open question. There's a lot of evidence. There are a lot of quite reliable women and men in this world who are paying very, very close and passionate attention to the crisis, the human crisis, the Earth crisis, and there's just an awful lot of evidence that we're in for an almost unimaginable destabilization of the entire Earth systems, of our biosphere, and consequentially of our global society, our human society. And I think I wanted to ask you. I just think that perhaps the child men. I'm just speculating here that they're marking time. That they're waiting to see maybe a little, waiting a few extra beats to see which way the wind is blowing, or to see what's going to happen literally in the next year or two, because this seems to be just such a crucial moment in our history right now. So I have a lot of respect for the wisdom of young people, and they're coming into a world that's never been before. They've been born into the internet world and born into this technologically enormous technological flux, and they're really being raised. They're raising themselves, because the older generations are not tech savvy. And what am I saying here? I'm just saying that the old song, there's something happening here, and what it is, it's not very clear. I wanted to ask you your take on the Occupy movement.
Well, I think it's an open question what they're going to come up with. I'm very interested in the similarities, actually, between the Occupy movement and the Tea Party. As the Tea Party developed, the Tea Party was really, a pro-small government and anti-bailout, anti-crony capitalism movement. And there is that overlap. I think there's a lot of anger out there at our elites. Whether Occupy will turn into a real political force, I think, is quite an open question. They are getting attention in a more emotional way. It's more symbolic to me at this point, and not very clearly politically important. Except insofar as these people who are demonstrating decide to go into politics, they're still going to have a policy. The kind of anti-capitalism that some of the occupiers are espousing, I think, is not going to go over very well with the bulk of the American people.
Mm-hmm. Do you think the anger is justified?
Somewhat. Sure. Some anger is some kind of anger is justified towards those who were running our financial institutions. There's no question they were behaving very badly and put us all at great risk.
Mm-hmm. What do we need to know that we're not aware of?
Oh, you'll have to be more specific than that.
Oh, you're a tough one. Okay. What do you personally see that you sense that very few other people see yet?
Well, you'll have to tell me if a lot of people see this. My sense is that they don't. Regardless of if we are able to claw ourselves out of this very difficult economic meltdown that we seem to be in the middle of, we're still going to face tremendous structural problems in the economy. That has to do with the knowledge economy, where the spoils, the riches, and the success is going to go to those who are educated and those who are able to provide their children with the kind of home life that will allow them to get ahead. I see us as turning into a caste society with the poor and the lower middle, working class, whatever you want to call it, on the one hand, and the college educated, well-to-do on the other hand. Mm-hmm. To me, that caste society should be one of our greatest concerns.
Right. If that's what's on the way, why is it a concern?
Listen, we are an egalitarian society. People have been willing to put up with a lot of inequality as long as there was mobility. That is, as long as people could move from class to class, as long as the lower class could, by doing the right thing, getting their schooling, marrying, and having, and only then having their children, could get ahead. They are no longer feeling that is possible. And if that is the case, if it becomes harder and harder for people to move up the ladder, then I think we no longer have America that we can recognize.
Mm-hmm. Are we our brothers and sisters' keeper?
Well, I'm not sure if you're asking me as a moral, or as a moral question, or a question about government. If you're asking a moral question, of course, how that gets expressed through government is another question. I happen to be on the side that says that smaller government is going to provide more economic growth and more possibilities for technological advance and ultimately better lives for everybody.
Is morality and government compatible?
Yes. I mean, look, any government program expresses values of some sort. They may not always be the values that I or maybe some of your listeners would want to be expressed through government. I'm thinking, for instance, during the decades where our welfare system grew exponentially, that the value there was, which looked to many people to be about taking care of people, or as you said, being our brothers and sisters, caregivers. It turned out to be a different value, which was to promote dependency, and that so a lot of times when government is setting out to do what it wants to, what it thinks is a good thing, it turns out to have unintended consequences. This is something that we at the Manhattan Institute find over and over again in many government programs.
Mm-hmm. I want to tell you that I had a rollicking good time reading Manning Up. I don't know if it came through in our conversation today, but I find your writing, your whole presentation, not only astute and illuminating, but very, very funny.
That probably makes me feel better. That's probably the nicest thing you could say.
Okay. I mean, I'm guessing that you're known for being a riot.
Well, actually, I've had people say to me, I didn't know you were this funny when they read the book. So maybe something came out in the book that I don't do in person so much. But although I love to laugh, I'm not always the best joke teller.
Well, I enjoyed it enormously.
Well, thank you.
Last licks, anything our listeners should be aware of?
Well, I think that it depends who we're talking to. If we're talking to parents of young people, of young adults, I would say, be prepared for a long period of pre-adulthood. They're going to need you. They're going to need you still in a way that you maybe did not need your parents, especially in this economy.
Right.
And look, don't encourage the slackers, but also recognize when things are really tough.
Yeah.
And that your kids will be settling down much later than they would have. And I would say to the young people, marriage and family life is not something that you've been taught to think hard about in your childhood. You've been thinking about what am I going to be in life? What's my career? But in the end, it's the personal life that means the most to most people. It's a cliche, but it's true. And I was just noticing that Steve Jobs, when he was dying, said, he wanted to be here for his children. Mm-hmm. That's what mattered. It wasn't Apple.
Mm-hmm. Thanks so much for coming and talking to us.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Take care.
Bye.
This is Kay Hymowitz, the author. Among other books, the new book is called Manning Up, How the Rise of Women Has Turned Men into Boys. And it's a good read, and it's what's happening is happening. What can we say? Ms. Hymowitz is a fellow at the Manhattan Institute for Policy Research, and you can find more by Googling it. And that's the way it is. I don't envy young people these days. I think it's always hard to be young, especially right out of school, the first couple of times around the block when you're on your own, so to speak, financially responsible for yourself, hopefully. And boy, what a tough environment right now. My heart goes out to young people, and I'm also inspired by their resilience and their oftentimes their courage and good humor. So we'll see how it goes. Thank you for listening. This is the What Now Show, Mondays 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. We're off to Bioneers next weekend, so next Monday we're going to have on the show. We're going to have Peter Atkins, the great scientist from Oxford. We should have a recorded interview with Gloria Steinem. And James Howard Kunstler is going to join us